Welcome to Thursday. It's the 4th day of November 2021. This Day Weather Podcast brought to you by Chugwater Chili, the gourmet spice of Western life. Get your Christmas gifts early. Holiday discounts at chugwaterchili.com through the entire month of November. Get a new discount each week this month. Don't miss out on these discounts. You get free shipping on orders over $50. We'll have new discounts from Chugwater Chili for you next week, but this week, great discounts. Go to chugwaterchili.com. Quiet and windy weather conditions will be pretty much the way things are going to roll here. Between today and the weekend, there's not a lot happening. Now, there's going to be a little bit of weather up in Montana, Idaho, northwestern Wyoming, and the Pacific Northwest, but that's really about it. There will be windy periods. Now, by our standards here in the Western High Plains and Rockies, the winds won't be awful, but the winds are going to pick up a little bit. It's just that time of year. There's still disagreement in the modeling for mid to late next week. I do see some weather middle of next week, but getting less, let's say less impressed that it will be a big weather pattern change, but enough to keep an eye on it. We do see that a fairly quiet pattern for the next week or two could be found in the Intermountain West and the Western High Plains, and we'll explain why. Now, we think that'll change later in the month and into December, and we'll talk about that. Long-range winter weather forecast is going to be posted later today on the Day Weather YouTube channel. We're going to be posting what our outlook is going to be for the winter season in the western United States. So that'll get posted probably sometime late this afternoon towards evening, and we'll leave that up there for quite a while for you to watch, and we'll see how that long-range winter forecast pans out. Today's satellite imagery shows a combination of things. Some low pressure and some unsettled weather coming into the Pacific Northwest coast. These are basically just high-level clouds. This type of pattern that we're going to have over the next several days give us what we do call lenticular clouds or mountain wave clouds. You're going to see a lot of those this weekend where you get those wavy clouds that form downwind of the mountain ranges. But really, that's really about it. But this little patch of moisture that you can see right here will end up zipping across just like this over the next 24 to 36 hours. It'll produce some moisture in some of the northern Rockies, but it's moving so fast it won't be a big weather maker. Now let's go back out over the Gulf of Alaska, because the Gulf of Alaska is just going to generate a lot of cold, stormy weather in this part of the North Pacific up here, including Alaska and including the Pacific Northwest and maybe down into Central California as well. This shows on the satellite imagery here, when you see clouds like this means that the water and the air is just really cold. And then we have these strong jet stream winds aloft where we have the warmer waters here and the colder waters here. So there's just going to be a lot of weather up here. But as it heads east into the mountains of British Columbia and the Pacific Northwest, the systems just get chewed up when you get into this type of pattern, and they just can't get very far east. Here's today's forecast chart. You can see the broad ridge of high pressure building on into the region. You can see that little wave right there. As you go into tomorrow, that little wave is already into the western Dakotas. You can see it's just not much of a system, but we have this permanent area of blue and green up here, swirling area of cold, moist air up in Alaska and the Gulf of Alaska. And that's just basically going to stay up there. Now, this is important. For those of you who watch the podcast regularly, I always talk about you need a ridge of high pressure here for us to go into the fridge to really get cold and stormy. As long as this low pressure center stays up here, it's just going to be hard to have any major weather event here. So this has to change. Now, one thing that keeps this low pressure area here is the fact that the sea surface temperatures are so cold. It doesn't mean there's a permanent low pressure up there. It just means that the tendency with those cold sea surface temperatures will be for that low to want to be there, which keeps the Intermountain West and the Western High Plains in a relatively mild, sometimes windy weather pattern. Yes, we have systems go through, but they just don't do much. And as we go into the next 90 hours, this takes us through Sunday, you can see where the precipitation falls with this pattern. Heaviest in the Pacific Northwest. Then look at that line that you get, the downslope winds off the east side of the Cascades in the Sierra Nevada. You just lose all of that moisture. You have some that picks up again here, and then the leftovers get to the Yellowstone Plateau. And then you might have a few showers that get east of the mountains there, but there's just nothing left by the time it goes through there. Then look how quiet and dry through the weekend this area is here. The wind is going to be a factor. These are the wind gusts forecasted over the next few days, and you can see that the usual wind-prone areas along the Front Range of northern Colorado, central and southern and southwestern Wyoming, going to be a little bit windy. Windy in the Bighorns, windy up in the Wind Rivers, and also very windy up here around Cody to Meeteetse. I call it the 3 Cs. Cody, Casper, and Cheyenne will be the areas that will have the most wind. By our standards, though, not awful. Just be prepared for them. Now, going out, this is for Thursday. We do have a little bit of ridging right here, but we still have that Aleutian low up here, and we do have a wave right here that will come through, bringing colder temperatures and some rain and snow showers to the plains. This is a good pattern. Northwest winds into the mountains with moisture will mean some snow for Wyoming's mountain ranges, Montana, Idaho as well, and maybe the mountains of northern Colorado. But it looks like it's going to be a very quick system, forming a trough by next weekend over the Great Lakes, which builds a ridge in behind us for here. So while we may have a little bit of weather the middle to the end of next week, a ridge comes back in. And again, look at the low up here in the Gulf of Alaska. So this has to be replaced by a ridge for our weather to get more interesting and more busy. Going out to 15 days. So I'm now going all the way out to the 19th of November. A couple of things I want to highlight here. Notice we still have the low up here, but it's getting stretched out, and it's actually retrograding back this way. So what is likely going to happen is that this low up here may be replaced by some ridging as we get to the end of November. It might even be around Thanksgiving time. We'll see. Notice this gray area up here. Okay, this is some extremely cold air right here that we see building over the higher latitudes right around the 19th and the 20th of November. So what I'm showing you is basically setting the stage for a change at the end of November into early December to a colder, more winter-like pattern. Until then, though, until this Gulf of Alaska low moves out, we're going to have these really strong jet stream winds continuing to feed moisture into the Pacific Northwest. And what we have here in the Rockies and High Plains are windy periods, above average temperatures, and precipitation on the plains that just isn't going to amount to much for probably the next 7 to 10 days. It's going to be after that before we see changes. And here is another representation of the cold weather. You see these numbers here, 492, 495, 489. Okay, so when you start seeing this type of temperature pattern that's developing, these numbers translate to, you're looking at temperatures that you're going to be around minus 30 or colder Fahrenheit. So that is the type of cold air that's going to be building up in those northern latitudes by the end of November. But you see the contrast here, the blue and then the red colors. The red colors basically say that as we get through the next week or two, it's generally going to be mild, and we're going to hold off any severe cold here for the next week to 14 days. So if you're one of those stragglers who haven't gotten your sprinklers blown out yet, well, you're getting a little bit of a reprieve. You're getting another chance. Sea surface temperatures showing the La Nina continuing right here. And you see this cold pool. We've been showing you this cold pool in the Gulf of Alaska. This is what makes low pressure want to sit there. And that is one reason why, believe it or not, when it's cold up here, we tend to be more mild relative to average here. Now, over the course of the middle to the end of November, we still think this cold pool will be here, but it may weaken a little bit, and some of these warmer waters might nudge on in. And then you start to get high pressure ridges that want to form here, which then open the door to colder weather later. Thanks for listening and watching the Day Weather Podcast. Don't forget, we're going to be posting our long-range forecast to the Day Weather YouTube channel later this afternoon. Have yourself